Alrighty. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Really quick, if you could just put in chat if this is like put a 1 or something, if this is your first time joining Community Observations Meetup, would love to see whose first time it is. Oh my gosh, like so many people. That's great. Oh, I love it. All right, well, welcome. This is Community Observations. This is our 6th meeting, which is amazing. And we couldn't do what we do without all of you. So thank you for coming and joining. Just to start off with a quick intro for your hosts. I'm Tiffany. I am the Director of Community Operations for a company called Venafi. A couple of my likes, they're pretty basic actually now that I looked at it, but love food and wine. I love Hawaii. I'm actually going tomorrow, which I'm really excited about. Also a huge Jason Mraz and Disney fan. And a recent ops project, we launched our community yesterday, which is huge. And everything that could have, thanks, Brian, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong.
Congrats.
Thank you. Sleep deprived and a little delirious, but yeah, that was my big project for recently.
And I am Cassie Mays. I'm located in Austin, Texas. I focus on community operations at Atlassian. Some of my faves are family, obviously, tacos. Like every month, I kind of go in and change 1 or 2 of these, but like tacos never changes. I never not like tacos. I noticed that this time. And I added in music this time. I do love some good hip hop or R&B. That is my go-to. But being from Texas, I also love a random bit of country. I'm all over the place. And I also like being outdoors. So like if it's walks, and especially now that it's getting cooler in Texas, it was like 80 degrees yesterday, which is like, yay, I can finally sit on my patio. So those are what I love. And what I'm currently working on is improving SEO on our event platform and getting all of the integrations we need for a new platform that we recently procured called Common Room, not only for our team, but for other teams as well that are going to be utilizing the platform. And just a few housekeeping notes. Obviously, camera is totally optional. I know a lot of us are on Zoom calls daily, so no pressure. We also love discussion and engagement in the chat, or after somebody presents, if you have a question or a relatable story, please feel free to share. Going to keep it super casual. And then also, if you just have any questions at the end of the presentation, maybe you're interested in presenting at the next event, or just need some advice, feel free to email us at opsforcommunity@gmail.com. But also, we are available in the Community Club Slack workspace and the CMX workspace.
Awesome. So as I'm sure a lot of you know, we are doing an Ops Top Dogs series. This is a framework that Holly Firestone developed, and we are in month 2, which is plan. Cassie, if you could push the next button 1 more time, the star will show up. So this will be a bunch of stories about and just best practices and tips on things to plan. It's a big part of a community operations role, just looking at the strategy, planning for future improvements and programs and all of the things. And so we have an amazing speaker lineup ready for you. I guess I can't say amazing because I'm in it and I don't want to. That's
well, I mean, toot your own horn, toot, you know.
I meant well, Allison and Jeff, amazing. Excited.
Well, I will introduce all you because I think you all are all amazing. So we do have Allison here, Jeff, and obviously Tiffany, but I'll let you all do like a short intro, especially Allison and Jeff, of like who you are, what you focus on, and what your talk will be about before we get into the nitty gritty. Allison, you want to start us off with just a quick intro?
Sure. And of course, I have an intro slide too, so you'll get to learn more. Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Abel. I'm currently the Senior Manager of Community at Sisense. And I'm going to be sharing a little bit about integrating community into an org's existing ecosystem, the plan I use to conquer that path.
Jeff, you're up.
Jeff, I don't think we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Is it better? Oh, Awesome. So my name is Jeff. I'm based in Lagos, Nigeria. I am the community manager for BuyPower.ng. So BuyPower is a tech startup that provides the platform for people to purchase electricity in Nigeria. So I'm going to be talking about lessons I learned from planning my first hybrid event, because it was really crazy and a lot of procedures. But yeah, I'm excited to share what I learned, and hopefully maybe more people will be involved in hybrid events as well.
Hello. Yes, this is Jennifer.
Hey, Jen, thanks for joining.
Uh-oh, I don't think I can hear you now, Tiff.
Huh.
I can hear both of you.
Yeah, I can hear you, Tiffany. I can hear you, Casey, as well.
Okay.
That's weird. Okay,
Yeah.
wait, I hear you now, Tiff.
Okay.
Technical difficulty.
Oh, what time is it? It's probably like 6 p.m. Like 6 p.m. in the evening. I just closed from work, so yeah.
Oh, okay. Nice. Well, thank you for your dedication. That's awesome. All right, Cassie, next slide. All right, so
All
first
right,
up is
Jeff.
Jeff.
Yep, you're
Oh,
up.
I guess I'm first. So yeah, I don't know. Can I share my screen? Because I feel like I worked on that. Or do you want to help me with that? So you have
Yeah,
to
if you-
stop sharing this thing.
Yeah, totally. I will stop sharing now. You got it.
So just let me know when you can see my screen.
I can see your slides.
Okay. So I don't know, can everyone see my screen? Like, just drop the comments in the chat below if you can see my screen. Okay, so yeah, I think I can start. So basically, my name is Jephthah. So Jephthah is Hebrew from open doors. It's in the Bible, but most people call me Jeff because it's easier to pronounce, and I just like people calling me Jeff. So my current role right now is I am the social media and community manager for BuyPower.ng. So BuyPower, like I mentioned, is a startup that provides a platform for people to purchase electricity in Africa. And so far, we have over 2 million plus active subscribers across the whole continent, which is crazy because I'm in charge of making sure everyone is happy. So it's a lot of work, but I have an awesome team. So basically, my area of expertise involves building tech community, planning awesome events, writing. I love writing. I recently published a book last year, and I hope to publish more this year and next year coming. So my hobby is obviously eating, even though it doesn't show on my body, but I love eating. I think eating is quite a hobby. Don't you agree so? Also, sleeping. I feel like everyone deserves at least 8 hours or more. And if I could get paid for sleeping, I'll definitely be part of that. And dancing, obviously, of course, when no one is watching. So a fun fact about me is I wanted to be a DJ when I was out that I wasn't that good. So I had to stop that dream. And right now I'm community manager. So yeah, I'll be talking about my lessons learned from planning a hybrid event post-COVID. So I'm going to be talking more about how it affected me where I am currently in Nigeria, because I don't know if other countries have COVID-19 procedures or precautions they take. But I'm just going to coming from the angle of me being in Nigeria. So if you have any questions or any suggestions, you can still drop them in the chat box. So I am a natural event planner, and I learned the best thing or the most important thing to do before planning every event. There's 3 questions I always ask myself, which is why, where, and what. I feel these courses are beyond hybrid events, but online as well. So you ask yourself, why? Why am I doing this event? Because the truth is that all events are not necessary for your community. Not all events are also necessary for your community or engagement or whatnot. The second question is, why is this event important to my community? Like, what am I going to benefit from this event? Is it going to make my community more engaging? Are people going to participate? Then the next question I ask is where. So where can I host this event? Spans across the platform you use, the host, the place you use. So as little as where it's going to be. Since it's hybrid, you're looking at online and offline. So it's really important you have a platform that is easy to integrate with your community and also easy to use as well. And also an offline event where it's easy to, or where they enforce COVID-19 procedures or precautions as well. Then the last question I asked myself is what? So what are my event goals? Like, what's my major takeaway from this event? What would my community benefit from this event? So this is just my quick go-to I use for any event I'm planning. Minus, it can be hybrid, it can be online, but I feel it helps me align my goals to where I know that, okay, where, why, what. So you can use it as well. It's free for you all. So yeah, the first thing I usually do when planning, sorry, give me a sec. Sorry about that. The first thing I usually do when I'm planning an event or a hybrid event is I usually have a clear mind map. I call it a mind map. So it goes from research to collaboration to execution. So your research is basically what you're looking at in terms of your platform usage, your user engagement strategies and techniques, your event hosts and whatnot. Then collaboration is your communication you have with your team, the event manager, and also your users. Because I feel as you're planning an event, you should involve your community members as well. Then the last stage is execution, like the present, how the program is going to be, what is going to happen during the program, and how it's going to post and pre of the program, basically. So if I'm going too fast, just let me know, because I tend to talk a lot. So I don't know if I do, just let me know, because I tend to talk a lot. So yeah, research. Basically, every hybrid event has 4 basic steps of research you do to make the hybrid, to align your goals and also to know how your event is going to be. So what I usually do is I make a detailed list of potential venues with my budget range and the event date. So it's funny, I'm going to be giving a bit of the story of the past event I just did, and I'm going to be making practical examples. So the first event I planned post-COVID was a hybrid event for a viewing party for a community I belong to. So I was looking in terms of which platform or which event center can I use that my community members would feel comfortable in and would make the most engagement. So I made a lot of research and I was able to find out an event center that had the tech feel I was going for, and also a platform I used that was very easy to integrate and very easy to explain to my users, because I feel it's important as you're planning an event to have an easy to use platform, because there is bound to be, the truth is that there's bound to be hiccups and technical issues because nobody can get it right. So just have a platform that's easy to use. So yeah, I explored the various platforms. I think I went to Hopin, used Bevy, which I currently use and I think is the best. Shout out to Bevy, but I think they are the best so far. I've used, I don't know of any other one. So yeah, and I was able to choose Bevy and I was able to choose an event center and it all came together. So I tested out my engagement strategies and techniques on a selected group of audience members, because I'm like, okay, what are we going to do for this event to make it a bit interactive and engaging? Are we going to play a game? Are we going to do bingo? Are we going to do something that will get them interested? I was able to get a list. A lot of people suggested a lot of things. Someone said, do a giveaway. Someone said, give out $1,000. And I said, how much is my budget? I'm giving out $1,000. So yeah, I think it's important to plan with your community when you are planning an event. And the last thing I did was basically I collaborated and collected my results. So the next step is collaboration. So you are only as effective as your team members in terms of making an event, because any small hiccup or any small delay can literally shut down the event. So I try to do a bit of async communication, like immediate communication with my team and report all findings, because if there's a bit of miscommunication, the day of the event, trust me, a lot of things will go wrong because everyone will assume, oh, I thought he was handling this, I thought he was handling the, and I just find out that it's easy to communicate better. I report all my findings with my team. And also something I learned from planning an event, not just hybrid event, is how to, I think when you are offering constructive criticism to your team, you have to be empathetic about it, like put yourself in their shoes and also offer them constructive criticism. Then collaboration with the venue manager. I think this is a very important area that most people tend to avoid. So let me just give you a quick tip or advice I usually do. So when I'm looking for a venue that I want to have an event, especially it's hybrid, I usually make a connection with the venue manager. Like outside work, we talk about football, and talk about the weather, and talk about anything as little as just to pick up a conversation. This is important because I find out that if you form a business relationship or a cordial relationship with the venue manager, it tends to like favor you more in terms of long term. For example, we had a budget of $200 for our event. And after I reached out to the venue manager, we usually spoke, we had a bit of banter, and he gave me the event center for $5. And the next event center, he said, when we want to do it, it's going to be free. Just because I made efforts to know him better, I felt that he felt like, okay, let me do this for you. So I would say this is a very important area when you are collaborating with your venue manager. Like try and form a relationship outside work, or if you can't, just try and form a business relationship as well. So yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I cannot overemphasize the fact that you need to collaborate with your community, because the truth is that you are building or you are making an event for your community. So drop hints there. I found that the best way to even plan with your community is on social media. You can tell them, we have an awesome event. We want to host it. Where do you guys think we should do it? And you see 1,000,001 suggestions. Some can even give you something better than your team, and it helps out in the long run. So collaborate with your team, collaborate with the venue manager, and collaborate with your community, which are very important things. So yeah, execution. Sorry, I tend to talk a lot, so my buzzword is always with me. So execution. I'm sure most of us that planned hybrid events, online events, always know there's bound to be hiccups, there's bound to be technical issues. So I always call it have plan B to C, because plan B is not enough alone. You have to have plan B, C, D, E to Z, because anything can go wrong. And things did go wrong in the event center. For example, the caterer did not show up, the host did not show up, and it was crazy because I was in another country and I had to like call the venue manager that I made a relationship with, and he had to like fill in for me. So it still brings us back to what I said in terms of forming a relationship with the venue manager, because you never know. So yeah, tracking users' participation. I think you have Zoom Analytics, you have Bevy does a good job just to see how engaged your user, and what you're really tracking is retention. If your users are staying, how long are they staying for? What exactly are they asking? What are they dropping in the chat? And that thing for execution is you have to have an offline and online team on standby, because this is very important. A lot of people have questions, and let's say you're a team of 4 or 2. My case, I was a team of 1, so I had to get some people else to help me, like my friends actually, like, okay, just help me do this, and we're able to like kill the event. Then because we're in the post-COVID world, it's important you have COVID precautions for your events, especially as hybrid events. You have social distancing, there's sanitizers, nose masks. Everyone is basically observing COVID-19 precautions. Then yeah, something I learned is you have to be flexible with your planning approach. I'm someone that's a bit of a perfectionist. What I usually want is it has to go this way. So when it didn't go this way, I was like, what's going on? Like I was literally frustrated, but I had to be flexible because I feel that's part of life. Like flexibility is a skill that I feel every CM should have, because things will definitely go wrong in your event. If it goes smoothly, I'll be a bit suspicious, like, this is too smooth. But because it's a hybrid event, I had to be flexible, like so flexible with my planning approach. Then, yeah, the last thing for execution would be having an immediate way of reaching out to your attendees after the event. I feel this is quite important because it's still fresh on their mind. And I've been for events where they reach out to me 2 days later or 3 days later. And frankly, I'm no longer interested because I'm like, oh, I attended it. So the best way is as soon as the event ends, you send them a quick thank you note, or I'd love to see you, or just something to get them involved in your next event, or just to bring them part of your community. So yeah, these 3 resources are like my go-to whenever I want to plan a hybrid event. So there's this awesome book by Imperial on Amazon. It's The Act of Gathering. So basically it talks about techniques you can use for events. Like it talks more about offline events, but you can implement them for your hybrid events. Then this blog I discovered how to plan a hybrid event really helped me when I was planning this current event. Then Bevy, I feel like at this point, Bevy should give me an ambassadorship because I'm always shouting them out. And I feel like they're the best platform I've used so far in terms of having an online show, basically. So yeah, I hope I didn't rush too much. I just wanted to like get all my points across and make it as easy to understand as possible. So yeah, thank you so much. I don't know if you guys have any questions or any contributions as well. I appreciate it.
I did have a curious question. How did it turn out? Like, I mean, you don't have to go into specifics of your goals and everything, but did you see the turnout you were expecting, especially for like an in-person? I know we're in different regions, but like, I'm just really curious about that, the turnout.
So I put a budget of, let's say 20 people. We had 30 people come up, so we killed it. Like so it was really, because the day I was so actually frustrated. I was like, I can't do this anymore, but I just had to like pull through, and it was a success actually. But next time it taught me I have to do plan B to Z, because I just had plan B, like, okay, if the host doesn't show up, but the host didn't show up, a lot of things happened. So that's why I always say do plan B to Z, because every possibility is is better for you as well as a community manager.
Awesome. Well, if anybody has any questions for Jeff, feel free to throw them in the chat. I didn't see any come up during your talk, Jeff, but I'm sure maybe people have one as they sit with the amazing content. So thanks for presenting. I will take over the screen now, if that is cool with you.
Let me stop sharing. Okay. Thank you so much as well.
Thank you. All right, next up, we got Allison. So, you see my screen?
Yes, I can. All right. If you can go ahead to the next slide, I'll think of something fun to say next slide instead of next slide. But thank you for being my operator. Just real quick introduction, because I want to dive in and of course leave enough time for our final presentation too, which I think is a great match to what I'm going to share today as well. As I mentioned, I'm Allison Abel. I'm currently based in Santa Fe, New Mexico, just recently relocated from Portland, Oregon. After my fiance got an exciting job opportunity, we decided to take an adventure in a new location. I'm currently the senior manager of community at SciSense, like I mentioned, where I've been tasked with building and launching our community. Fingers crossed will be happening soon. And then also building a community team, which I'm really excited about as well. And I'm excited also to share that I just recently added my first teammate a few weeks ago, who's going to be focused on our content strategy. So very excited about that. Prior to that, I worked at Higher Logic, which some of you guys may be familiar with. It's a community platform. I worked as a community strategist and consultant, and have experience launching over 30 communities, probably more. I lost count, all shapes and sizes, big, small, corporate, nonprofit, anything you can kind of think of. I've had an opportunity to engage in those projects, and it's been a great learning experience. And then I also want to flag, I'm a former teacher. I love sharing that, because as many of us know, we've had prior careers before landing in community. And if you ever have the opportunity to hire a teacher in a community role, I highly, highly recommend it. There's so many skills I lean into every day from my teaching experience. And when I'm not building communities, I'm a dog mom to the max. Gotta give a shout out to my BFF Scout on the right there. And then a little fun fact, and I apologize in advance for those that may be sensitive. I love exclamation points. I use them, probably overuse them. I know they're controversial, but I do love them. I get excited about a lot of things. All right, the next slide. So what do I want to dive in today, and how does it relate to planning? One of the things that I find most critical in any community project, and I want to emphasize any, I'm going to lean more into a new community that's launching, but I do find that these tactics really can be utilized for revitalizing a community or even launching a community program. You may already have an established community, but you want to launch a new program. I want to talk about how you go about integrating community into an existing org ecosystem. And I want to talk about this because oftentimes we lean into talking about executive buy-in and oftentimes don't spend a lot of time about the layers that fall under the executive. So you may get executive buy-in, but there's a whole process you have to undergo to really get that buy-in across the organization to make your community a center of excellence. So if we can go to the next slide. This has been a trending topic you may have seen in the LinkedIn and the Twitterverse all over community as a center of excellence. I've stolen this graphic from Holly Firestone. I think she may have created it, and I love it because I think it does a great job of really illustrating how community can have an impact organization-wise and how important it is to connect community organization-wise and make it very cross-functional. I'm very excited to see in the next few years because I think primary community experience has been community comes after the organization is already established. Each of these departments is already, has its norms, has its processes. I'm very excited to see over the next few years the startup concept and how startups lead with community and it doesn't become the after effect. But what I shared today is community is late to the party, which is kind of common these days. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So I want to play a little game. I like being interactive here. I'm going to read each of these statements. And what I'd love for people to do in the chat is state whether they are true or if they're false. So if an organization buys community, it automatically means the organization is completely bought in. True or false? Related. Everybody gets community. So you've purchased this thing and you go in and everybody has a shared definition of what community is. They know how it's going to work and how it's going to affect their day-to-day. Process gaps is welcome news. And I want to explain this a little bit. If I'm a community manager and I walk into a department meeting, let's just say product, and I share with them and I state, I've recognized or I've observed that you have a huge process gap and the community is going to solve all your problems. That's going to be welcome news to them. And related, turf wars are a myth. We're all working together and towards the same goals, right? So I don't have to be worried that I'm going to have any type of turf wars. And a good example of turf wars is ownership of content, for example. And then change is easy. I think this one's kind of obvious, but I got to throw it in there. All right. I'm seeing a common theme in the chat. These are all false. These are all things that I've had to learn transparently the hard way through my community building process. I will be completely transparent and honest. I had assumptions when I started building communities. I figured, well, if a company is making a big investment in a community, everybody must be excited about it. Oh, I am going to go to a department and I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to take this off your plate, and they're going to be willing to give it to me. All of those things I've found to be completely false. So these lessons learned have really impacted the plan that I put in place when I began a community building process and really look at how I'm going to integrate a community into an existing organization. So if we can go to the next slide, my plan. And I already know I violated the slide deck rules. There's lots of content here. I have a simplified version on the next slide, but I did want to make sure I got all my thoughts down here, and this will be shared after. So don't spend too much time trying to consume it all, and I apologize. But my P is for plan. What do I do to integrate community into an existing organization? A few notes here. This is very high level, and I will take ownership that each of these steps has plans attached to them. So defining community goals, I'm going to have a plan to define those community goals. Drafting a community structure, I'm going to have a plan to draft the community structure. So it's a plan within a plan within a plan, essentially. Lots of plans. Another note here is that when I'm doing this process, I'm engaging cross-functionally. And what I mean by that is I'm engaging every single function of an organization. I'm not just looking at the obvious sources. I'm not just going to support. I'm also going to my business operations team. I'm going to my internal IT department. I'm engaging every entity of the organization when I am starting to have my community building conversation. And then I apply this, as I mentioned before, for all types of big programming things, whether you're launching, revitalizing, looking at other programs, et cetera. It's really important to me that I'm engaging every part of my organization to have that buy-in and to really work towards that center of excellence concept. And another quick note here related to planning and our plan category, I document everything. So each of these steps is clearly documented, all the results of these steps are documented, and all of them are accessible to my community team or myself, which I will own. Most of my experience is being a team of one, so this can be done as a team of one too, but when I do grow, it's still accessible. And also the partners. So each of the departments and functions I'm engaging, they also have access and can access this documentation. Really quickly, the goals that I have with these steps, really to understand how my org functions org-wide. How do each of the departments function and have a clear understanding of that so that I can accurately build a cross-functional relationship, alignment, partnership, and systems to really make that community center of excellence, as I mentioned. And then one that I really want to flag, if there's one thing you take away from this, the real big value in this is I'm able to identify through this process right away any potential red flags that may pop up along my community building journey. And I really want to emphasize that because sometimes what I've seen happen is we spend a lot of time developing our community plan in silo, and then we go to implement it, and somebody raises their hand and says, that's not going to work. And you've spent all of that time building your plan, building your systems, and the key person that needs to be involved in it wasn't included in it. And suddenly you have a red flag that you're going to have to pivot on, which could change your whole entire strategy too. Take that as a lesson learned for me. So just at a high level, again, being mindful of time. One thing is I love to chat community, and I could chat community all day, every day. So if you're interested in engaging after this, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to chat and collaborate and learn from you as well. At a high level, what is my plan? I start in what I like to call the visioning stage. And what I do is the executives have the buy-in, they've invested in the community. So I work with them to define what are our community goals going to be? What am I going to be working towards? And then from that, I build out my community structure, and emphasis on draft. I'm building out a drafted structure. I'm not building out the end all be all. I'm not developing a fully baked strategy. I'm developing something that I can go into these conversations and share and get some really good feedback on, and really kick off the cross-functional conversations. Once I've done this kind of visioning mapping exercise, I'm aligned with my executives, I am now going to start to go into the layers of the organization. I'm going to spend a lot of time studying an org chart. This is really vital in my experience. If you have ever switched companies or built communities for different orgs, not every org is the same, not every function is the same, and that's really important to keep in mind. So I do spend a lot of time looking at my org chart and looking at the layers of my org chart. How are these departments organized? How is the leadership organized? and at what levels are those leadership, as well as the day-to-day. And then I identify a few key stakeholders at each of those layers to engage in an introductory conversation. It's really important for me to build relationships. So to start that and kick that off, I send out a 30-minute meeting request, really emphasize, hey, I'm just interested in introducing myself, getting to know you, getting to know what your day-to-day looks like, what your responsibilities are, what tools are you using? And I'd love to also share some of the ideas I have about community to get your feedback. And I host those calls and I record all of this information, as I mentioned, and really lean into it by just reflecting on it after I've collected all of this information. Apologize, got stuck on my words there. I reflect on it, and then I take a look at my drafted plan, restructure it based upon that input and that discovery, and then I go back to that group. So if I've met with a few people in support, I then follow up with a bigger support meeting and I share what I've learned and I share where I see the community fitting in, both at an organizational level and at a level that impacts them in a day-to-day way. And that call is really focused on very much being a workshop collaborative session. I'm really focused on balancing both observation and also feedback. As I mentioned, not everybody wants to hear they have a process gap. Not everybody's going to be excited to hear community is going to come save the day. So I really try to balance that conversation so that it is very collaborative and really kick off that partnership relationship building effort. After that stage, there may be a requirement to have follow-up meetings to continue alignment. It may get lucky and in that initial workshop, be able to align kind of on the vision. Or there may be the time where you're really hitting a roadblock on something and you may need to escalate it at an executive level for an executive decision to be made. And just a comment on the executive thing that oftentimes can be a little scary, but that's one of the important things when engaging your executives in the community building process is they need to be kept abreast as you continue to develop, but they also are your key advocates because they're the ones that have made the decision to invest in community. So it is important to consider them when you do hit a roadblock, to partner with them and ways to find resolutions to those roadblocks too internally. So I know it's a lot of information I just threw at you, but just in summary, kind of what my plan is: visioning, initial engagement, building together, and then alignment, and if needed, escalation and continued alignment. And then you go into your implementation, which Tiffany will probably touch on too, around road mapping and building out kind of your plan for success too. Just a few quick slides I'll share that share a few more details. This is the simplified version, so it's just nice, quick, step-by-step. On the next slide, this is something that I wanted to share as well that I found really, really helpful, visually mapping things. I found this really helpful, especially in cross-functional meetings, because not everybody has an understanding cross-functionally of what's going on in an organization either. Oftentimes you're working in silo. Knowledge is a great example of this. Oftentimes knowledge is being stored in multiple locations already, and the community is a great opportunity to consolidate it, but it is important to know where it's being stored and who's currently owning it. So this chart is showing you kind of the basic elements commonly associated with a community knowledge base. What I've done is I've met with each of these departments and I've mapped out who thinks they own each of these things. And then I've presented this to each of those departments and we've worked together to find a better solution that optimizes our customer experience and consolidates some of these efforts and creates a more operationally efficient organization too. I can't lie, I've had executives actually steal these visuals before to lead some really impactful company-wide transformations too. All right, next slide. This slide is just an outline of how I structure that follow-up meeting. So as I mentioned, I have that introductory call where I'm doing all of my learning, and then I come back to each of those teams to share how I feel community is going to be able to be integrated organization-wide and affect their day-to-day as well. And I just wanted to share that outline as well as some considerations and really emphasize the balance piece of this, leading with empathy and relationship building top of mind. Next slide. Sorry, I'm trying to go as quickly as possible. All right. So I'll end here. This is again just the summary slide. I hope you were able to glean something from this. Also just want to share my appreciation for letting me jump in here. This is one of my professional challenges this year, is to speak more publicly. It's not my favorite thing to do, but I'm working on it. So I appreciate the listen. And if anybody has any questions or wants to share anything, please feel free to jump in.
Hey, Allison, I have a question for you.
Oh, great.
I mean, I know the answer, but I think for other people, it would be useful. At the top of this, you talked about dealing with sort of coming into an established organization, and you're obviously like a change maker, right? In this particular example, you talked about sort of like the turf wars. What's your, recommendation to the group here for navigating that super fun, awesome time?
From lessons learned, one thing that I would recommend is to take the time to build the initial relationship, but also don't hesitate to push back. So typically what I do is I have that initial conversation where we get to know each other. I then maybe have, 2 conversations about, idea sharing and collaborating. But if we're not making any progress in the community building process, I do sit down and have one of those difficult conversations where I do really emphasize that a decision needs to be made. And if we don't make any progress in that conversation, then I do again escalate to that executive and lean into that executive relationship to bring the group together to find resolution as well. But I do think it's important to take the time to build the initial relationship, attempt what you can to make progress. And then if you can't make that progress and you continue to hit that roadblock, don't hesitate to go back to the executive. It can be scary, but I promise it's worth the time because you do need to get this initiative off the ground. You have things that you have to follow through on. And so I highly recommend that. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Looks like we have another question. Is it Christabel?
Hey, Alison, lovely to meet you. And thank you for that preso. It was like super concise and you packed so much in. So I run the Women's Fellowship for StartMate. So it's essentially a community for women who are trying to land their first job in a startup. And we're thinking about launching another community. And I'd love to know what questions you ask yourself when you're doing that initial visioning, when you're coming up with a new community, like what frameworks and strategies do you use to do that, to think through that process about, is this viable, is this desirable, before then going back to the exec?
That's a great question. We could probably dive into that in a lot of different ways. So typically what I'm going to look at when I'm determining if a community is even viable, and sometimes I will be honest, I've been brought into projects that I've already had the investment and I've come to find out that the community may not be the best option for what they're trying to achieve. I always recommend looking at what are the goals, what are you trying to achieve? What is the area of opportunity to achieve those goals? So especially like in some of those niche communities, do we actually have the audience that we can even potentially engage in those things? And I also spend some time doing a lot of discovery process. So I actually talk to potential community members to really understand, is this a need, and validate that need? And if it is a need, what is the best way to approach that as well? And I know I'm oversimplifying this, and I'd love to connect to, I'm not sure if you're on LinkedIn, I have tons of resources that I can share, but those are some of the considerations I make. And then keeping in mind kind of common best practices around what community looks like. But don't hesitate to start in a phased approach either. Start small and then grow over time. I often find a lot of people think of the end result as opposed to how to best start to get to the end result, if that makes sense. So I know that was really scattered, but I love to connect and share more specific examples too.
No, that was awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. And yeah, keep it simple is the way to go, but I'll definitely connect with you afterwards. Thanks, Allison.
Sounds great. Thank you. All right. Let me hand the mic over to Tiffany.
Cool. Thanks, Allison. Just also to note, everything that you said just resonated so much because we did just launch a community in an existing org, had to go through all the steps and form the relationships with the stakeholders, which was also interesting because I had just started at the company. So it was like, hi, nice to meet you. I'm Tiff. also, by the way, tell me about your processes and tools that we're going to take over with communities. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, that was great insight. All right, we have 12 minutes. I'll try and breeze through this. I'm going to be talking about road mapping, which is a big planning process. Now, for those of you who have attended any of my previous talks, you probably know that I really like analogies. So I'm continuing this analogy with road mapping road trip. So let's think about the journey of road mapping, which is kind of the big crux and big chunk of what road mapping is the journey of creating it. And part of it is you want to think about where your team wants to go. So the milestones, the goals, the initiatives, the things that your team wants to achieve, or your final destination on your road trip. How you're going to get there. So, what are the tools? What are the processes you need to set in place? What are the steps and maybe dependencies on each other for, various tasks and line items that you have to do? So, are you going to take a plane? Are you going to take a bus? Are you going to take a car? I'll stop the analogy eventually, don't worry. How long will it take to get there? So the duration, how long is, a certain initiative or project or event planning task going to take? Analogy wise, it's pretty simple. And then what pit stops are you going to make along the way? So, are there any intermediate steps on an initiative that you want to pause and take note or, report on, or a certain milestone that you want to, pause and reflect on? Maybe take pictures at the Grand Canyon on your way to the next destination. And then who is driving when? So, with your community team, thinking about the roles and responsibilities. Certain projects and programs take multiple people from the team. And so looking across your team at, who will be doing what and when for any initiative is also, something that you should be considering in the roadmap. And road mapping is, super valuable. It helps plan your future projects and events and initiatives, launches, new tools or platforms. It's really yours to build however you'd like it to. Additionally, it allows you to see both on a granular and a higher level the initiatives and when they take place relative to one another, what's going to be taking your team's bandwidth and time, and just also gives wider visibility. So if you want to share your roadmap with stakeholders or other partners who will be working on those initiatives with you, or if you're supporting an initiative from another team, being able to show them, the priorities, the goals, the milestones and things that you're working on helps provide kind of that, org-wide visibility. And it's also really good to show leadership and executives as well. So next slide. Sorry, I'm continuing this analogy a little bit more. You want to have your packing list. So making a roadmap, even before you make the roadmap, there's a lot of prep work that you need to do to make sure that you're setting yourself and your team up for success. And the first thing that I recommend is team prep work. So have each of your team members look at the year ahead and maybe even look at things that they have done previously and start planting the seed in terms of what they'd want to contribute to the roadmap. So if they know that they have an initiative or an engagement that they're working on in Q2, document that. What kind of time does that take? Who from other team or what other team members or other partnering teams is that initiative going to take, and have them start documenting from their perspectives their individual roadmap for the future. And then, when you come together, you'll essentially bring that together and collaborate with one another. But each team member should have prep work and do their due diligence, think about their roles and the future. Also, your roadmap should not just be nuclear to your team. You should think wider in terms of company-wide events, initiatives, goals and KPIs. So if you're, the leader of a community team, you also want to think more strategically. What are your company goals, OKRs? How does the community fit into those initiatives? For example, at Salesforce, we would have Dreamforce, which it's actually going on right now. Not an initiative that's led by the community team, but it takes a lot of the community team's efforts. We're doing events for our community leaders and our MVPs. We're planning things. We're doing swag kits for certain people. It takes a lot of work, and that kind of stuff should be also included in the roadmap because it takes your team's time. And as a leader of a community team, you kind of have the insight into all of the other initiatives, what the company goals are, and you can incorporate your roadmap to include aspects that fit into your company goals. Organizational alignment, kind of touching upon that already. Save the time. Road mapping is a full day exercise. It took us a really, really long time. You jump into the details, you're collaborating, you're debating. And so, make it fun. You can reserve a shared space, make it a day, allow the team members to have out of office messages set up, maybe plan a lunch or a dinner. You want to make it super engaging and, really reserve the time for it because it adds so much value to it. Then tool, gosh, I'm going so slow. I'm sorry, we only have 7 minutes left. So, okay, tool. Pretty much you can use whatever tool you want. It's dependent on what your needs are and what your team wants. So at Salesforce, we just used Google Slides and just had it, with little squares in a single slide for the year. At Venafi, we are using Team Gantt. You can also use, Google spreadsheet. You can use Asana, you can use monday.com, and you can use kind of whatever tool benefits you and your use cases. I would just recommend that it's on the cloud. So, each team member can jump in and view it and in real time with updates. And then the roadmap purpose, it really depends on what you want with the roadmap. So kind of touching upon what Jeff said earlier with events, you want to think about the why. Why are you creating this roadmap? Are you doing it to create a business case for new headcount? Are you doing it to look at your team's priorities and bandwidth across the year? Are you looking to provide visibility to leadership on what the team is working on? You want to kind of think about the reason and the purpose for the roadmap, and you craft it and go into specific details and how granular you want to go with your roadmap depending on that use case. Next slide. So making the map, kind of what I touched upon earlier, you want to make it to whatever your use case is. At Salesforce, ours was super high level. We had one column for each quarter and just had a square of MVP renewals and nominations, and that was it. It wouldn't go into how much, hours it would take. It wouldn't go into, oh, Cassie, it looks like you switched screen.
I'm so sorry,
You're okay.
Brian. He threw a link teaser in there and got me.
Sorry.
Let me share the screen. No, that was my
Brian.
bad. I didn't know it would go on that one. All right, hold on.
No, you're all good.
Y'all.
You're good. You're good. Okay. So, what was I saying? Start at the high level. Okay. So depending on what you want, you can start at the high level. And this is kind of what all roadmaps should have. So looking at the programs, looking at the timing, when is it taking place? And also the duration. Obviously, some initiatives will be maybe just a week long, and some might be a quarter, or even 2 quarters long, depending on, maybe it's a dev cycle, or maybe it's, MVP nominations and renewals took an entire 4 months at Salesforce. So looking at that, and then you can also dive in a bit deeper. You're all good. Dive in a bit deeper. So you look at within each program, what are the individual initiatives or line items or tasks that need to get done? You also want to think about team member involvement. Like I mentioned earlier, each program requires multiple people to jump in. So for example, I started off as a program manager at Salesforce, but wound up still having to rely on community managers for engagement and moderation. And I was handling more of the operations part. So in that line item, it's important to also note that, that community manager is doing work, it's taking time away from their day, as well as me from an operational standpoint. And then also bandwidth and hours. I kind of talked about this in one of my previous sessions, but you only have a certain number of hours in a week, and you have trainings, all hands, other meetings that are taking time away from you. And so really having, if you want to go into a deeper level, being able to see the hours that each person is working, and if those goals that you're putting in your roadmap are really realistic to what your team is capable of doing, is another consideration once you dive a little bit deeper. Really quick, just to kind of show examples, because these are all theoretical until you do them. This is the high level. So looking at the programs, and this is real screenshot from the road mapping exercise that we did. They're looking at the programs at a high level, looking at the timing and looking at the duration. So recognition is going to be ongoing. Your launch is going to be during this time, and you're going to have to deal with takeoff turbulence during this time, which is going to take more of your team's bandwidth. So programs, timing, duration. Next, diving in a little bit deeper, this is if you expand the recognition and gamification side. These are all the individual line items that we had, or some of them actually. And then you can actually see the, again, the timing and duration of each of those individual line items within the larger program. And then going in even deeper, you have, next slide, Cass. Going in a little bit deeper, you can actually look into team capacity planning as well. So using Holly and Sophia here, everyone knows they're on, we're all on one team. So, here for each line item, we were able to show, all right, it's going to require Holly this number of hours. It's going to require Sophia and I this number of hours. So you can either do it based off of like a time frame. So like it will take 3 hours a week for this quarter to do this item, or I need to do, case triaging for an hour a day. That can be something else too. Or if you know the, estimated total time for an entire initiative, you can include, I know that planning for this event is going to take 40 hours this month. You can even do a total assigned hours there. And then bonus, something that we did if you're looking to get a business case for additional headcount, is we actually added this little community manager here, and we started allocating hours to them because we were already over our hours. And so that way you can actually see justification of, we need another full-time person who's doing this many hours of work, and incorporate it in there. So I'm sorry, that was really rushed. We were having some really good conversations, but just to kind of go over arriving at your destination, what do you do with a roadmap after you're done with it? You've spent hours working on this. It's beautiful. It's up to date. What do you do? The first thing that I would recommend is sharing it with your stakeholders and your leadership team, especially the stakeholders, the partners who are working with your team. I think it provides a lot of visibility and clarity around maybe when their team's bandwidth is going to be needed, or when they can help support the community team. If you are using your roadmap to create a business case for new headcount, that's another reason that you could use it. And then revisit it regularly. Your roadmap shouldn't be something one and done that you create. It should kind of be your source of truth with regards to, your priorities and what things are taking on when. I would recommend we do monthly revisits. So every first week of the month, we revisit our roadmap and make updates as needed. You could also do it quarterly. And also, it's a source of truth, but it's also flexible. So you can continue to mold it and change it as things happen. Like if COVID happens and you need to reshuffle everything, your roadmap should be able to be agile and fluid with you and your team. And then the last thing that I would recommend is make an external version to share with your community. We had, you're listening to feedback from your community members on new features or what have you, or maybe initiatives that they want. Creating a front-facing roadmap for your community provides that level of trust of you are listening to them and you do want to incorporate things that they're suggesting. And they really they really appreciate it. So we had a couple different versions at Salesforce, one for our community leaders, one for our Salesforce MVPs, and one for community members. Obviously, it doesn't go into the same amount of detail and stuff as your internal one, but just adds a lot of value and trust with your community. Yeah, so that was it in a nutshell. I know we are 1 minute over. Real quick, Cassie, next slide. Oh, also slight plug. Brian has a podcast, In Before the Lock, with Erica Cool, and they did an amazing episode on road mapping. I absolutely loved it. So if you are interested in diving in more, would definitely recommend giving that a listen. Next up, we have Scale from the Ops. So anything related to automation, growing your community, how to make it more self-service. So if you have any success stories, lessons learned, are currently doing something related to scaling your community, we'd love to hear your stories. So please feel free to reach out to us. Oh, that was a lot of talking.
You did great. You did great. But yeah, I mean, the final note, if you guys, I know we had a lot of first timers here. So if you want to be updated on the upcoming events, join our community. Here's the bit.ly link, but again, we'll also share these slides out after the event. But thank you to all of our speakers, Tiffany, Allison, and Jeff. It was super amazing, relatable content. So thank you all so much. I know we're at time, so if you have any questions for anybody, I know everyone is on the CMX Slack workspace. and or a community club Slack workspace as well. But if not, you can reach out to us at this email down here, opsforcommunity@gmail.com, and we can get you in touch with any of the speakers if you're unable to find them. But thank y'all.
Thanks, everyone.